Hi, everybody. My name is Nina Gordon-Kirsch. I'm the Massachusetts River Steward at the Connecticut River Conservancy. And tonight we're going to learn about greywater, um, what it is, what the legalities are here in Massachusetts, and what legalities are like in other states where it's a little more advanced. And feel free to introduce yourself in the chat and go ahead and post any questions you have in the chat, and we can answer them as we go along or at the end. So first I'll just introduce myself and a little bit about why I'm here talking to you about greywater, why it's something I love. So as I said, I'm the Massachusetts River Steward at the Connecticut River Conservancy. And part of my job is doing anything that helps take care of the Massachusetts section of the Connecticut River. And a part of that is about thinking smart about how we use our water resources here and how the river gets manipulated by humans. Part of my background is that after undergrad, I got a Fulbright scholarship to go to Israel and study wastewater reuse. And I was specifically looking at the fate of emerging contaminants like endocrine disrupting compounds such as plastic residues and pharmaceutical wastes, and birth control pills and things like that, and how those have an impact in the wastewater treatment process, what happens to them as they break down over time, and then when that water gets reused at the end, where those contaminants end up if they're still there. So a long time ago, I started thinking about water reuse as a part of my career. And then I got my master's degree. I stayed in Israel after my Fulbright scholarship, and I studied Palestinian wastewater reuse for my master's degree and looked at ways that Palestinian communities in the West Bank could reuse their water, and rely less on Israel for incoming water. And then on a passion level, I used to live in California where I had a job doing permaculture installations. And as a part of that, I did so many greywater installations for like 7 or 8 years. I also love my dog and I love cupcakes. And I truly believe that small actions times lots of people equals big change. And what that means here is I believe that if so many people had greywater reuse systems in their homes, it could really change the way that water is manipulated here in Western Massachusetts or anywhere that these practices are implemented. So tonight we're going to talk a little bit about our freshwater resources so that we can ground in why greywater is so important, or greywater reuse is so important. We're going to define greywater. We're going to talk about regulations, and then we're going to go over some simple greywater systems. So first, we are going to back up to 3rd grade. You might remember learning this, or you might not, because it was so long ago. Ocean water makes up 97% of the water on Earth, which means that fresh water is about 3%. And out of that, 70% of that fresh water is locked away in glaciers. It's inaccessible to us to use. 29% of it is underground in aquifers, and a wee 1% is rivers and lakes. So that means that less than 1% of all of the water on Earth is actually accessible freshwater, like accessible meaning that humans could go and touch it and grab it and take it and pipe it, as opposed to like a well from an aquifer, which would be underground. So all of us need water to drink. All of us need water to shower, so many things. And where does our water actually come from? It's not taught to us. It's not taught in schools. If you live with a well or grew up with a well, it's much more ingrained in the daily life to be in touch with where water comes from. But generally speaking, if people live in cities or on municipal water, they don't think twice about where their water comes from. It just arrives to their home. And the truth is that where does our water come from? It comes from wells, from groundwater, rivers that pipes come out of, or have dams for reservoirs, lakes, and rainwater collection. And again, I just can't reiterate enough how precious this water is. So where does your water come from? Here's another participatory question if you want to write into the chat. Where does your drinking water come from? Where does your shower water come from? Does it come from a river near where you live? Does it come from a well? So go ahead and write in the chat where your water comes from so we can see who's here and where your water comes from. And if you don't know where it is, totally fine. You could Google it or you could just note, huh, that's interesting. I don't actually know where my water comes from. Nice. So we have some people on wells, some people having municipal supply, Quabbin Reservoir. Great. And then the next question is, where does your water go after you use it? Does it go to a septic on your land? Does it go to a wastewater treatment facility? Do you know where that wastewater treatment facility is? So you can write that into the chat. This is just so you know, generally so I get a sense of who's in the room of should I talk more about septic systems or wastewater treatment facilities or both, and it's looking like both, but there's a lot of wells and septic people. So yeah, great. So I grew up in a city. I had no idea what a septic tank was because my water went to a wastewater treatment facility. So for those out there who aren't familiar with a septic tank, it kind of looks like this. This is a very simple design. Water from the home goes into a tank that's underground. All of the fecal matter, the sludge, sinks to the bottom and creates a biological bacteria that help to treat the water that's in the tank. The water is in the middle, and then all of the oils and scum is floating at the top. And the water that's in the middle ends up overflowing into a leach field, which I'll just say on the side because we're learning about Greywater. A leach field is very, very similar, if not the same, as a Greywater system. So if your water does not go to a septic tank, it goes to a wastewater treatment plant in a municipal area that treats water. There's 3 different levels of treatment: primary, secondary, and tertiary. In the United States, most wastewater treatment plants go all the way to tertiary, which goes to chemical treatment like chlorine. Secondary treatment is biological, and it's kind of the same as a septic tank. And then for people who are on municipal water supply and their wastewater goes to a treatment plant, the sewers can be combined or separated from stormwater. So what does that look like? It looks like the pipes underground are either intertwined with one another or they're kept fully separate. And in dry weather, they function as normal. So a combined sewer, the picture on the top, shows that the storm drain, which is dry, doesn't have any water going through it. And the apartment complex in that picture is draining its sewage into a pipe that goes down to the sewage treatment plant. In a separated sewer, the storm drain is fully separate from the sewage treatment plant. It's totally separate systems. So this is a dry weather picture. And then in wet weather, you can see that in a combined sewer, the top photo, the storm drain goes and mixes with the sewage water. And when there's too much water from the storm, from rain, the sewage treatment plant actually overflows into the nearby, into the outfall, which is a nearby water body. Here in the valley where we are, it's the Connecticut River. In a separated sewer system, when there's a big rainstorm, when there's wet weather, all the storm water overflows into that water body without being treated. So there's pros and cons of both. Does anyone have any questions about combined sewer outfall or overflows? Okay, so I just want to say part of the reason why I am an advocate for gray water reuse is because I think humans, I think we would be better citizens of the earth if we took better care of nature and if we thought more critically about how and when we use water and how we can have less impact on our waterways and in our natural systems by using just what we need and not in excess. So that's like my core value of why I think gray water reuse is really important, is to lessen our negative impact on manipulating the waterways. And I will say, in addition to that, now we have seen in Massachusetts that we have drought, and we actually, it's not just on like a values level of how we interact with our natural systems, but there's a real there could be a scarcity of water in the future if we aren't using our water resources in a particular way. So I got this graphic from DCR last week, I think, at a webinar on drought. And it's the second fall, last fall as well, we were declared drought here in Massachusetts. And so it's really important for us right now, not when we get to level 4 emergency drought, to be thinking about our water resources and how we can conserve them. So Greywater Action is an amazing resource. This is an organization started on the West Coast. And what happened is a lot of states in the West did get to an extreme level of drought and had to have emergency protocols for how to use water and how to manage water reuse. And Greywater Action started educating residents and politicians and anybody who wanted to learn about greywater of how to install greywater systems, and also worked really hard in multiple different states to pass greywater legislation. So what is greywater? It's gently used water flowing down the drain from particular pieces inside of our house, different washing machines, bathtubs and showers, lavatory sinks, and sometimes kitchen sinks. So it depends on what state you're in, how kitchen sinks are treated. Some states think of kitchen sinks as black water because of the amount of carbon content in food that goes down a kitchen sink, especially if there's a garbage disposal. And some states think of kitchen sinks as gray water because it doesn't have fecal matter. Then what is black water? Wastewater containing fecal matter from toilets, laundry if you're washing diapers or toxins, and then sometimes kitchen sinks. And then often rainwater gets lumped into gray water, or gray water gets lumped into rainwater, and I'm here to tell you that they are not the same. In the water industry, in the installers world, and in the legalities world, they are treated differently. So I want you all to know that rainwater is separate from gray water. So for reference, I did my master's degree in Israel, where over 90% of the wastewater is reclaimed, which means it's reused for irrigation or for factories, industry use. And that's the highest, that Israel is the leading country in the world for reusing its wastewater. The next up are 20%. In Spain, about 20% of the water is reused. In Australia, about 19%, and Turkey, about 5%. Those are the next three highest. Does anybody want to guess in the chat what the United States is? Alyssa says 1%, great guess. Yeah, so I actually when I made this presentation a few years ago, it was less than 1%. And I just did research that we have increased our reuse, which is amazing. And it's about 4%-ish, which is great. In the past, I would say I did my master's degree 10 years ago, and the United States was definitely less than 1% then, and now we're to 4%. So what does this really look like when we're reusing gray water on a residential level, not on an industry level? There was a study done in Santa Cruz, California, that looked at all of the outflow water pipes from a home and looked at gallons per day, per person per day. The outdoor irrigating plants was about 15. Toilet was 11, clothes washer was 11, shower 10, faucets 8, and then some other smaller amounts. And the idea is we could eliminate the 15 gallons per person per day used in the outdoor portion of watering by harnessing a laundry machine and a shower and putting it to the landscape. So by utilizing gray water, there could be a 16 to 40% reduction in potable water use. That's what this study found. And there's a lot of reasons of why it's good. Obviously, the environmental part, we're dealing with drought. We want to use less water, and also taking less water from where it's naturally occurring. Is the 15% outdoor use consistent across states? No, that was just from this study done in Santa Cruz, California. So I don't know what the outdoor use would be elsewhere. So benefits of gray water. This is a picture of one thing I didn't say before is I'm born and raised in California in the Bay Area. And so I grew up in a climate that had drought constantly. And one of the reasons why I left to move to Massachusetts is because I didn't want to live in a state that had wildfires every year and drought and restrictions. And so I am like so passionate about us getting ahead of the game until it gets to an emergency situation. So this is my backyard when I lived in Oakland, California. And let's see, can you see my mouse if I'm putting my mouse on the screen? Yes, great. Okay. These are two apple trees. Back here on the fence is blackberries, a bunch of blackberry plants, and these are all raspberries, and behind there is a fig. All of these are watered by gray water from my laundry machine. And how it gets there is through, we'll talk about it, but this is an outlet, this is an outlet, these little green tops where the mulch basins are, and then there's 2 outlets in the raspberries and one back by the fig as well. So just giving you a picture of like what it can look like when it's really happening in real life. So what are some benefits of gray water? And I want you to write in the chat. What are some things, like why is it a good thing to reuse gray water? There's so many benefits. What are they? Tell me in the chat. Yes, wasting less fresh water. That's right. We get to reuse what we have. It costs less because you're actually buying less water from the provider and you don't have to treat it. There's costs to a wastewater treatment facility. Generally a sustainable system, reuse of nitrogen captured from detergents. Oh, interesting. I'm curious about that. I don't know too much about the nitrogen in the detergents. Kathy, feel free to say more in the chat. Okay, so I'm going to put a whole list up here in addition to what you all said. Saves time watering. So I used to water my garden in Oakland. Then I didn't have to water half of the whole garden because my laundry machine did it for me. It also saves money on a water bill because I'm not paying for as much water coming into my home. Saves energy. Moving water around actually takes a lot of energy on a state level. Like think about the amount of energy it takes to move water from the Quabbin Reservoir to Boston homes. I imagine there's a system that's set up that I don't know personally, but I imagine there's a system that's set up that's a lot of gravity. And in addition to that, it has to get to every home and there's a lot of energy included. Decrease potable reliance, which is great for just general independence. Fire resilience. So as you're putting more water back into the ground and into the soils, fire is less likely to spread through an area. Carbon sequestration. The more water that is in the soil, the more carbon is in the soil. Carbon cannot be in a drought, and they go hand in hand when they're living in the soil together. Local ecosystem improvements like more plants encourages healthy product use. So as I'll talk about in this presentation, you can only use particular types of products that are more natural if you're gonna put your water back to the land. And now I don't have a gray water system in the home I'm living in here in Massachusetts, but because in California, my bath and shower were a gray water system, and my laundry was a gray water system, I started using eco-friendly soaps, and I was like, actually, if these products that I used to be using are not okay to go back to the land, why would I want to put them on my skin? Why would I want to put them on my hair? So now, even though I don't have a gray water system, I'm actually still choosing to use healthy products because I'm like, I don't want bad things on my skin. And then another thing here in Massachusetts that could be possible with more gray water reuse is CSO reduction. So the combined sewer overflow, what we talked about where our wastewater is flowing into the rivers. The more water that doesn't go to the wastewater treatment plant means that there's less water in the system during a rainstorm that would overflow. So it's 2025. Why has it taken so long? Why are we not all reusing our gray water already? There's some valid concerns. One is polluting our waterways. Another is runoff into neighboring properties. Contamination of soil with toxins or salts. Exposure to humans or to pets or to children who are out and don't know that it's gray water. Mosquitoes, if there's water that's all going to a place that is stagnant. And the main one that I know of from most of the states in the West and specifically California, the biggest concern is cross connection into a potable water supply. So accidentally hooking up a gray water system that would backflow into a municipal supply. What is the physical process to show you? Okay, so I will talk about how the actual gray water systems work at the end of after we go over legalities. So I see that question in the chat and we'll get to it. So now we'll go over the legalities of the different states here. In California, different states have different places where gray water reuse gets codified, gets legalized. In California, it's in the Plumbers Code. And some of the pieces that I'm just going to highlight here for you all to learn about is that it says that the gray water cannot have any contact with people or domesticated animals. So that looks like no spraying, no sprinkler system, no ponds or like runoff. It can't be on the surface. And then no surfacing or daylighting. So you can't have like a flowing area of gray water in your backyard. Another piece is that you can't store it for more than 24 hours because they don't want bacteria to build up. No toxins, so you have to use very particular types of no sulfates and no salts, sodiums in your products. And no touching the edible part of a plant. So you can't use it to water potatoes or garlic or something that is growing underground. Here in Massachusetts, our gray water reuse legalities are in Title V, which is the septic regulation in the Massachusetts Department of Environmental Protection. And it's specifically section 310 CMR, and I think it starts maybe at 15.2, but goes into 15.3. That I can look that up specifically. There's no simple gray water systems that are permitted, like in California. We'll talk about how there's one that you don't even need a permit for in California. It's very simple. And then there's another one that you do need a permit for, but it's simple. And neither of those are legal here in Massachusetts. And the ones that are legal here in Massachusetts are larger and fancier. They have filtration systems and pumps, and they're pre-approved. And if the system you want to use here in Massachusetts is not on the pre-approved list, then you can apply to Mass DEP to get your system approved. And I am a part of Western Massachusetts Greywater Working Group, which is a bunch of citizens who are just meeting monthly together, um, meeting monthly to talk about greywater use and how we can get it legalized more in the state of Massachusetts. Um, and that was an old bullet point. So legalities across the watershed for those who are not in Massachusetts. And Amanda, as I talk about these, you can post the resources into the chat. So Vermont is one of the 3 states in the US that doesn't have any rules or classifications around greywater. So everything is considered blackwater. But a colleague of mine who's doing work in Vermont has talked to regulators, and they're open to the idea of pilot projects. In New Hampshire, there's no reuse of greywater that's legal, but there are some minimal regulations around how you can discharge greywater to land, including a mini dry well, which is like a hole that's dug in the ground 18 inches in diameter and up to 12 inches deep, filled with stone or gravel to discharge the water into. And Amanda posted in the chat where you can find more information for New Hampshire. In Connecticut, there's also minimal reuse, and mostly what it speaks to is like to have a septic tank, but it's for greywater. So it would be like the same as having a septic for blackwater, but you might have a separate one just for greywater, which I'm not totally sure on the reasons why that would be useful. And if you're interested, if anyone here on this call is interested in being a host for a pilot site in any of those 3 states or in Massachusetts, Kelsey McWilliams has a company called Point of Shift, and she is helping start pilot programs in different states in New England, specifically to get research and to see how it's working here, to be able to show regulators that it's working. So now we're going to talk about 2 greywater systems. This one is called Laundry to Landscape. It is super simple. In California, it does not require a permit at all. Anyone can take their laundry machine and redo, I'll show you how, I'll talk about how, put their water into their backyard. So the first thing I'll just say as why? Why does this not require a permit, and maybe a bunch of other greywater systems do require a permit? It's because of how laundry machines are plumbed. So if you have a laundry machine in your house, I recommend that you go look behind it if you can, if it not right now, but after this presentation, and see what it looks like back there. You will find something called a stand pipe, which is just a pipe that is standing up in midair, and the exit hose from the washing machine is in there, and you can pull it out. It is completely detachable from the house plumbing system. So that the fact that a laundry machine, you don't have to cut any plumbing, you don't have to talk to an architect, you don't have to talk to a plumber, nothing has to be changed. All you have to do is take your exit hose from your laundry machine out of the standpipe. That's all you have to do. So that's why it doesn't require a permit, because they trust the general public to be able to take an exit hose out of a standpipe. And I'll talk about how to hook it up. But just to get an overview of like what it looks like. So here's your laundry machine. Maybe it's in your garage. And this is the exit hose from the laundry machine, and it goes to a diverter valve, which we'll talk about in the next slide. There's a choice that you can use a lever to put the water back into the sewer when needed, if you want to wash baby diapers or something like that. Or the other side is how it gets into your backyard. This is all PVC pipes, plastic PVC, and then once it hits the ground, it transitions into landscape tubing, irrigation tubing. and there's smaller diameter tee-offs at each place you want the water to go. And so in this picture, it's showing the water going to plants, which is often in California what's being done right now because they're trying to cut the amount of outdoor irrigation water that's used and replace it with washing machine water. It doesn't have to go to plants. It can literally just go back into the earth, go back into the ground. So you depending on the design of the house and what is there and what the system is. So this is a three-way diverter valve. The one on the left is used for laundry to landscapes. It's 1 inch in diameter. The one on the right is 1.5 or 2 inches, which is the larger plumbing tubes for showers, tubs, and sinks. And how it works is it has a lever and it allows for the water to flow. Picture the exit hose, the laundry machine water coming up here, vertically up. And when the lever's turned one way, it'll go to the left. And when the lever's turned the other way, it'll go to the right. So that allows you to take your washing machine water and put it back to the sewer or out to the garden. You always have a choice when you have a three-way diverter valve. This is what it looks like. This is a system I set up in a friend's house in California. You have the exit hose coming up and then the three-way diverter valve with the handle, and it can either go back to the sewer on this side or out to the garden. This side is the garden I can see because there is this is a anti-siphon, which I don't think I need to go into the details right now, but it's an important part of it makes your washing machine keep working in the way that it does. Once you have your tubing, once you have your PVC and your landscape tubing out to your garden, the way that the water is dispersed into your yard is into a mulch basin, or you can do a gravel pit that's underground. The reason why there's a mulch basin is there's a few different reasons. One is the California code says that the water cannot be on the surface. So in order to meet that, you want the water to be underground. This particular photo was taken in a yard that has a high clay content of soil. So soil can be sandy, clay, loam. And when there's a high clay content, it means that the percolation rate is very low. That means that water is not going to be absorbed very fast. So if you were to, in one laundry load, a laundry load takes anywhere from 30 minutes to an hour. And if you're pumping out, depending on what type of laundry machine you have, anywhere from 8 gallons to 40 gallons in a half hour to 1 hour, that's a lot of water for the soil to intake in a short amount of time. So in order to mitigate that, you can dig out the clay soil or whatever soil it is that you have and replace it with mulch, which is very porous, and the water can sit there and disperse slowly into the ground. So this is what a mulch basin looks like. You dig out, this can, depending on, this gets designed based on the water usage, how many loads of laundry you do per week, what is the maximum number of laundry loads you would do in one day, and design the Greywater system to be the maximum capacity, to the maximum amount of water that you would use in one day. So you dig it a particular amount deep and wide, depending on the water that's going to be entering the system. And how many mulch basins you have. You could have 1 mulch basin, you could have 6 mulch basins, you could have 1 really long mulch basin. So it's all about the volume. And then there's this piece, which is a mulch shield. Originally, like back in the day when these systems were first invented, we used yogurt containers, empty yogurt containers as a mulch shield. And does anybody want to guess in the chat why a mulch shield is important? There's a few reasons why we want to have a mulch shield on the end of our tubing here where the water is coming out. Don't want mulch getting into the tubing. Totally. You don't want anything getting in there. Clogging to keep the mulch. Yeah. Okay. So It is definitely the mulch, but it actually is more plant roots. Plants are so smart, trees are so smart, and their roots have sensors, have little antennas of like, where is water coming from? I'm gonna go there. And for gray water systems that don't have mulch shields on them, I have seen so many plants climbing up the tubing and clogging the system. So to prevent that, you can put a yogurt container, or now there actually are these irrigation valve boxes that we use to block the tubing so nothing can clog the system. So the other part of the laundry to land, I mean, of any is choosing what kind of soap you're going to use. This brand BioPack, I know they sell here in Western Mass at the River Valley Co-op. And you can use it for dish soap, you can use it for laundry, you can use it for shampoo. And it's a very basic, mild soap. And it does work. I use it for my clothes. It does not smell like laundry detergent or whatever. It's not a fake smell, but I prefer that. And then there's also a company called Oasis Designs that's in California, and you can order this online. And the cost. So the cost of all the parts for a laundry to landscape system, I would say are about maximum like $350. And you could get, if you're like reusing parts and being scrappy, it could be more like $200. And then for professional installation, it's so dependent on what the yard looks like and what how much water you have, and if you're wanting it to go to specific plants or if you want it just to go back to the earth underground, can be anywhere from 700 to 2,500 for labor. And then before I move on to branch drain, let me just talk about one other piece about a laundry. Well, two other things. One thing I'll talk about, the laundry machine that is pictured here, it's a top loader. And I'm gonna pretend it has a center agitator in it. Top loading washing machines that have a center agitator historically use 40 gallons of water per load. That's a lot of water. And so when I think about the fact that Massachusetts is drifting into drought, as California has for my whole life, um, that's so much water. So a few things we can do about it is replace our washing machines to use less water. Newer ones can use as little as like 10, I would say. And I think there's some European ones that are much smaller and they use like 8. I think more commonly, washing machines nowadays probably use between 12 and 17 gallons per load. And then another thing I want to talk about is what is so special about a laundry to landscape gray water system is that a laundry machine has its own pump. How a laundry machine works is that it fills up with water, it agitates, it releases the water. How does it release the water? It pumps it out the exit hose. It has its own pump to pump the water out the exit hose. Then it's soap, the soap comes in and agitates again to clean the clothes. And the water has to go fully out again, and the pump does that and the water exits from the laundry machine, and then it fills again with water to rinse it. So because a laundry machine is set up that way to have its own internal pump, a laundry to landscape gray water system utilizes that pump to push the water out to the yard. Something that I think about when I'm designing a system is I want to protect the pump. I don't want the water to have to go too far. I want the laundry machine to stay working and not have to replace it. And so usually what that looks like is if the landscape is like easy for it to go 50 feet, and then maximum I would put would be 100 feet from the washing machine, unless it's all downhill. If it's downhill, it doesn't matter. The pump won't have to work. So those are two things that are really special about the laundry machine is, I mean, thinking about how much water you're using with your laundry, how many gallons per load, and then also knowing that it has a pump. It has its own pump. So the second one that we're going to talk about tonight is the branch drain system. And this is for showers and like bathroom sinks and bathtubs. Unlike a laundry machine, it does not have a pump. So unlike a laundry machine, you have to use gravity to design this system. So every single tube that is placed outside in the landscape or in the yard has to be downgraded. It has to have a slow slope in a downward direction. In California, permits are required for this because it's cutting into the house's plumbing fixture. You can see under the house here is where the three-way valve is, which can be hooked up to an automator, so you don't have to actually access underneath the house. You can flip a switch that's above the house. But it's cutting into that plumbing, those plumbing pipes, the 2-inch or inch and a half plumbing pipes. Pipes have to have a continuous slope, about a 1/4 inch per foot. And then the flow is distributed by flow splitters. So if you want to disperse water in a landscape in a branch drain system, you have to design how the water is going to keep getting split and split and split and split at each intersection in order to reach each of the plants. And greywater systems, generally speaking, I will say, can either be designed to a landscape that already exists, or I used to work for a landscaping company that as we were planning yards with clients, we would ask them if they wanted to water by greywater and design a landscape that met the locations of the greywater fixtures. So cost for a branch drain system, it's probably more than this now, but I would say like 500 or up for parts, like 500-ish for parts. And then really depending on the design, 800 to 4,000 per professional installation, plus the permitting fees from the city or the town. And the professional installation is so much more for a branch drain system than a laundry landscape system because there's no pump. Every split area, the system for branch drain at each of the splits has to be evened out and make sure flow is going in all directions. And there's more particularities on how it's designed. Laundry to landscape is like literally it can just like water will just flow into the garden whether you do something or not. And so it's very simple and foolproof. And then before I go on to industry level greywater systems, I will also say that for what was I going to say? For these particular systems that are like smaller and at home, in California, people are learning how to do them themselves. There's lots of resources, there's books, so people are not even they don't have to hire a professional except for branch drain for the plumbing part. Cutting into the plumbing requires a professional. But it's hands-on. You can do it yourself. And the other part of that is that every system that I've installed, and the California code includes a homeowner manual has to go with the home. So all the pictures of the installation so that anybody knows where the tubes are buried and how to flush it out every 6 months or so. You can hook up a hose to it and flush the whole system out to make sure that there's no gunk built up. And there's a homeowner's manual that comes with every system. So laundry detergent strips, less wasteful. Yes, great. Laundry detergent strips are great as long as you look at the ingredients and make sure that they have less sodium and less sulfates. And then, so New England winter, There's multiple ways to deal with a New England winter for graywater systems. These systems are also in Yosemite in California where there's snow. They're also in Montana where there's snow. And I've talked to a few different people of how they manage it. One is that they'll turn their system back to the septic or back to the sewer for the winter if they don't want to deal with frozen pipe levels. Another way is to dig the system below the frost line so that you can keep using it throughout the winter and there won't be any frost issues in the pipes. And generally speaking, like, does it have to actually get blown out for winter? It definitely could get blown out like landscapes irrigation tubing does. But the people who I talked to this past week to check in with them about it said that because especially with branch drain where everything is gravity fed, there's no low points. So there's actually no left standing water in the system. And for a laundry to landscape system, there shouldn't be any water left in the system because all of the outlets let the water out. So in an ideal world, there's no water that's left in the system, but blowing out a system is precautionary and is great if you want to. Okay, and then I'm just going to speak to what, I mean, there's a lot of industry level graywater. This definitely requires permits. It definitely requires a plumber and takes more knowledge and also has a huge impact. So San Francisco Public Utility Commission, which is the organization that provides water and power to San Francisco, and actually not just San Francisco, but 2 million people. They have a building, their headquarters in San Francisco is called the Living Machine. And they built this building. And Amanda, you can put a resource in the chat for the Living Machine. There's rainwater harvesting on site at the building that collects rainwater and reuses it for irrigation. It goes through a filter and has the ability to do UV treatment as well. And then all of the gray water on, like all of the water from water fixtures on site are treated within the building and used for toilet flushing in the building, which is a huge deal. It's amazing. This is what the Living Machine treatment looks like. First, there's a primary tank. It's like a settling tank. And then there's I don't really know the specifics exactly of what's happening here. It's different from wastewater treatment, which is what my expertise is. And then the water that gets treated in these systems goes through a tidal wetland, which actually is amazing water treatment. Plus these plants, I visited the building. These plants are outlining the building. So the water is not only going through here for treatment, but it also adds plants to the facility. And then polishing vertical flow wetlands, meaning that it goes down through, sometimes that can be that it's going through a wetland, it's going through sand, it's going through gravel when there's a vertical. And then disinfection. And then a reclaimed water tank, which then gets pumped into the rest of the building. So if you all are interested in learning more, this is what I would recommend that you get. There is a PDF that's free online that I think I gave to you, Amanda, to post in here, that the San Francisco Public Utilities Commission gives out. It's just a PDF. You can page through it and learn about laundry to landscape systems, learn about branch drain systems. And then there's also this book, Greywater Green Landscape, written by Laura Allen, who's like the mother of Greywater. She started Greywater Action. She's installed more systems than she can count. And she's lived in multiple different areas and helped legalize graywater reuse both in California and in Oregon. So that's the end of my presentation. I know there's more, there's so much more I could talk about, but I'm gonna stop sharing my screen and just see what questions I missed in the chat and if there's any other questions that people want to bring up. I am here to answer questions. So let me bring my screen back. So let's see. Does the Greywater stain toilets or other enamel fixtures in homes or commercial applications? It depends on how the Greywater is treated. In the San Francisco building, it does not. They treat it to a level where you literally cannot tell that it's Greywater. Which also reminds me that another piece in California is that any tubing that is Greywater that's on an industry level has to be purple or has to be labeled. So purple is the automatic sign that something is Greywater, so people know that it's reclaimed water. What other questions do people have?
So any movement on the regulatory landscape in Massachusetts?
Oh, right. Okay, yeah, I missed that one. Thanks for that
That's all
question,
right.
Carrie. So I'm meeting with a group of regular old citizens here in Western Massachusetts, some installers, some um uh like people who used to be on their board of health in their towns, someone who works for the Rich Earth Institute, and we are definitely trying to get these systems more eventually, yes, we want to get them legalized. That would be our goal, our hope and dream. And a big part of that is education, is like talking to regulators, talking to citizens. What is Greywater? Why do we want to reuse it? We met with DEP and they were like, we don't have enough information. We don't know enough to be able to legalize this. And so I think right now the biggest step is educating. Um, both regulators and the general public on what Greywater reuse is and why it can be a solution for us so that then there's more comfort that it's okay, as well as um, uh, need, I mean, want like demand for it. And yeah, Porvi, do you want to talk a little bit about that as well?
No, I don't know if you can tell how excited I am by your presentation today. I like my questions are like, wow, I'm getting answers. No, I just want to know like who you're talking with at DEP and also with home rule in Massachusetts. Is this something that like a local entity can take on, or because it has to do with the plumbing board, which is a state board? So I think that there are sort of striated levels where, that you could engage, and maybe something on a simple level might be something that like a local um, building department could permit, but I'm not sure like what it is. So I'd love hear your thoughts.
Yeah. How I understand it right now is that the Mass DEP Title 5 septic code um, doesn't allow for local boards to legalize certain gray water systems, that it has to be approved by DEP. And there's like an application online for particular systems that has to go through a whole DEP process in order to get approved. That's my understanding right now. So I mean, it would be great if I think, I mean, eventually what our goal is to have Title 5 be changed to allow more systems. Like for instance, in California, laundry to landscape is allowed with no permit. And for local boards of health or local boards to be able to approve and design systems that are good for their own areas as well.
Yeah, that's so encouraging. I would love to hear more about like your conversations with DEP. So previously, when I was at the MEPA office, and you may not be familiar with the Mass Environmental Policy Act, I was there for 15 years, and we were constantly looking at projects and suggesting, making, and encouraging measures to mitigate whatever the impact was. So from transportation to water, and so we would often encourage reuse of water, but there wasn't a lot of regulation, or we didn't have a lot of teeth in providing resources. So it seems like DEP is looking at more like sophisticated gray water systems. So I was wondering if maybe the Board of Health, and I meant the Board of Health, not the building department, could maybe take on the more simplified versions, that you're talking about, like the laundry to the yard. So
Yeah, that's an interesting point. And yeah, I think DEP thus far, to my knowledge, has really taken on the bigger, like the industry wide, the building wide, the fancier and more expensive systems, but not the residential ones. Yeah.
Heather made a great comment here, but Heather, if you know where they are in Kendall, I would be happy to try to find out and go and see them.
Here I am. I was just looking them up because it was actually some plumbing industry representatives that told me about them. So I have an idea, but Google just told me, so I want to ask them if those are the buildings they're talking about. But I'll just chime in that I'm very excited about this. Both at the longitudinal landscape level and at the larger level, especially as Massachusetts moves forward in meeting its housing crisis. I think there are some real connections here. So yes, there are some regulatory hurdles to get over, and I think we are game to continue to work on those.
Yeah. And thanks, Heather, for being an ally in our process.
And I have to sign off now too, but Nina, thank you very much for this presentation.
Yeah. Yeah. And I'll just say thank you, everybody, for coming. I do see there's another question in the chat I'll answer, but I also want to thank Amanda Major for being my tech support person from CRC. I appreciate you and appreciate everybody coming to learn about graywater reuse. So the other question I see in the chat is about rainwater. So in California, rainwater is legal to use as there's no regulations on it up to 500 gallons per household. So you can take your downspouts and put them into a 55-gallon drum or a series of 55-gallon drums that are all hooked up with a PVC pipe between them. And use it for irrigation. You hook up a hose to it, use it around your yard. Some people I know in California keep it as just like an extra water supply in case of drought or earthquake or something happens to your water pipes. And I don't actually know about rainwater legalities in Massachusetts. So that would be something that I can look up. And yes, we will be sending out this recording so you can share it with all of your friends. Okay, well, I think oh yeah, Alyssa.
Yes, I have a question on that, and I am also from the Bay Area in California, moved to Massachusetts for many reasons, including the waterways here. Concerned about our future in terms of drought, and have seen it myself. I do remember for a while in California that it was you were not allowed to collect your rainwater, and people were getting ticketed. And it was definitely a part of, trying to gain a better understanding and create these possibilities like y'all are doing here today. But have you seen in some conversations you've had with folks, there being fear around this in that way where it is something that people are sort of scared of or punitive towards?
Hmm. Um, I think the only resistance I've seen in Massachusetts so far has been from DEP, mostly because of just like not knowing enough and it feeling like a foreign topic, and like the health and safety of it. Um, I know, yeah, I think I remember what you're talking about of like in California not wanting people to collect rainwater because they were afraid that they were like hoarding water in particular areas when there was a drought happening. And I think that probably the ticketing, at least I know, doesn't happen anymore in the Bay Area. I don't know if there's other places that it does, but now there's actually an encouragement to collect rainwater up to 500 gallons so as to use less water from the system. And it even if you're not it allows water to like stay local, to like put water back in the ground and not have it get run off. So when there's a storm, all of the soil fills up with water. and then there's runoff. And if you're holding some of that water in a tank, then you can put that water back into the land when the land is not inundated with water. So it allows for like slower percolation of water into the land. But yeah, I don't know, I haven't heard of people here yet thinking in a malintentioned way about water hoarding or something like that.
Well, that's super cool. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, nice. Great. Well, it's a little bit after 7. I'll still be here, but maybe we'll stop the recording and close out this session. So thank you all so much for coming. I hope you learned about Greywater, and you're always welcome to contact me. I love talking about Greywater. And I'll email you if there's ever any upcoming things you should know about in terms of Greywater being advanced here in Massachusetts. So thanks again for coming.
Thank you so much, Nina.